Today, I have a pleasure of speaking with Jacqueline Rose, who's menopause coach and educator. Hello, Jacqueline.
Hi, Annetta. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you for joining me. And I'm always really excited about having a conversation with you because we've had so many conversations about hormones and women and the impact of hormones on different stages of our life. And I wanted us to have this conversation here because this is the conversation that I have with so many women. And even though there is more understanding out there about hormones, and we are talking more about the impact of hormones on different stages of women's lives, there is still not enough, or I feel that there is
Yes.
definitely not enough of it. And so I wanted to ask some questions from you.
Yes.
And the first one is really like straight to the core of the problem. Like, what is the number one question that you hear from women in context of having those conversations?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge that women face is this lack of understanding. And as you've said, the menopause conversation especially has totally opened up. Women's health is now being understood a bit more. Traditionally, women's health has never really been understood deeply in the conventional medical setting. But menopause, the explosion of menopause conversation has allowed these conversations to now start happening, which is amazing. However, as you correctly said, the conversation around hormones specifically and the impact of hormones on our body and what that means throughout our life cycle, especially in perimenopause and menopause, but not only, is something that we are not yet talking about. And one of the things that I think is really being misunderstood, and one of the things that I speak to my clients about because they often don't understand with the clients I work with specifically in perimenopause and menopause about, why they're having symptoms or why are they not having symptoms that other people are having, or why, are they having these symptoms and nothing else? And how many symptoms can they check off their checklist? Is that the hormones that we always talk about in women's health are the reproductive hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, FSH, and LH. And those are very important hormones, but they are only a small part of the larger hormonal picture going on in our bodies. And if those hormones were the only ones that were important in the conversation, then women throughout their life cycle, and especially in that perimenopause, menopause stage, would only ever experience period-related changes. But we know that women experience numerous symptoms, especially in that perimenopause, menopause stage, but also anyone who is familiar with female teenagers knows that we talk about, they're being so hormonal, but their expression is physical, emotional. We all know, if anyone is exposed to a teenage girl slamming doors, screaming, yelling, crying one minute, happy the next, this crazy, I put in bracket, in inverted commas, emotional roller coaster ride as they start their menstrual cycle, as their hormones wake up, as their hormones start to sort of get into that cyclical flow. If it was only those 5 hormones related to periods and cycles, fertility, infertility, regular periods, irregular periods, we wouldn't expect to have all these other physical, emotional, cognitive experiences also. So I think the most misunderstood thing, and the one of the messages that I really work to promote, is that these 5, what we in inverted commas call feminine menstrual cycle related hormones, actually play a very intricate, delicate, and interconnected role with all our other hormones, and they all impact each other. Cortisol, the stress hormone; insulin, the blood sugar regulating hormone; melatonin, the sleep hormone; serotonin and dopamine, the feel-good hormones; and lots more. They all work together, and I think that is something that is really not understood.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So really what you are talking about is that we need to think more, which I love, in systems kind of way, that it's
Yeah.
not just let's talk about the hormonal health here and the how we can supplement hormones and what we can do about that, but actually about the whole system, the big system of our body, and the impact of our environment and everything else that has got on that system. So you're talking,
Yeah.
about cortisol, adrenaline, melatonin, serotonin, that is
Insulin, yeah.
very closely related to other choices that we make within our life.
Yeah. So I think that's the next stage of the conversation. The first piece of the journey of understanding why hormones are so important in our bodies, specifically a female body, is because the first piece of the story is they are all interconnected. And what happens with our reproductive hormones does not stay in our reproductive system. It is having impacts everywhere else. And the second thing is this phrase hormonal balance or hormonal imbalance. And symptoms, I don't like that word symptoms, but let's use it for the moment. Symptoms, again, at any stage of a woman's life cycle, are a sign that we are out of balance. And out of balance starts with hormonal imbalance. So, if let's take the most typical example of a woman who has irregular periods or is trying to get pregnant and isn't being successful. So very often you will go to your doctor and you will say, I'm having irregular periods. Let's start with that. I'm having irregular periods. So what is the typical traditional thing your doctor will say to you? Two things that is usually said when you go and say, I'm having irregular periods. The first one is, well, let's go on the pill to regulate your periods. Or the second one would be, well, you're probably very stressed out. You're probably going through something. Come back in 3 months, come back in 6 months if it doesn't sort itself out. So to me, I'd love to, shake that doctor and give a little scream and say some, choice swear words, because what is the doctor actually saying here? The doctor is actually saying your symptom, the expression of this imbalance, which I, the doctor, have no idea really what's going on because I'm not really well informed and educated about a woman's body, is really saying, let's treat the symptom, which is irregular periods. We put you on the pill, you're going to have an irregular cycle. If you want to get pregnant, that obviously isn't going to necessarily be the right course of action. So let's wait 3 to 6 months because we don't really understand female bodies. We know female bodies are complicated. So we're just going to give you some time to try and sort yourself out. And then let's come back. Now, obviously, I'm being a little bit facetious, but that really is what is going on behind the scenes. Rather than asking the question, what is going on in your body? Why are your periods irregular? Why are these hormones not working in balance the way that they should? What is going on here? And that's the next stage of the conversation. Why is a woman's symptoms or the symptoms are an expression of imbalance? Why are you out of balance? What is going on here with your hormones? And yes, and I do think it always comes back to the hormones. The hormones are really those signposts telling us something is out of balance here. Let's figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, and so what I'm hearing you saying is that it's actually a little bit of a bigger conversation than, going into your doctor, having 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And, I'm very grateful for our medical system.
100%.
And
Yeah.
at the same time, what you just said, that the female body is quite misunderstood because, a lot of kind of research is done on male bodies because they are much more predictable. Female bodies are much more unpredictable with their changing hormonal cycles. And really, it's a big conversation, isn't it? To actually find out what's going on and not treat just the symptoms, but to look a little bit deeper and see what is the cause of that happening. Yeah.
And as you correctly said, we are not here to disparage the medical healthcare system because they do some things exceptionally well.
Mm.
However, at the same time, we need to acknowledge that, as you said, women have not traditionally been included in medical research.
Yeah.
Only in 1993 did the US Congress pass, I think it was 93, pass the law that women had to be included in research, 1993. In addition, we know that the cultural conversation around women's health, the cultural conversation in Western societies around hormones, female hormonal experience has been very derogatory. And we said of ourselves, I'm feeling hormonal, or the conversations in the workplace of, she's at her hormonal time.
Yeah.
Those conversations, that cultural language, we said about ourselves, it's an accepted joke. It's always used in a sort of, to explain why the woman is more moody, more crazy, more this, more that. And we really need to reclaim, and I'm very passionate about women reclaiming that language of being hormonal beings, because
Yeah.
it is our hormones that make us feminine. It is our hormones that give us the ability, whether we choose to or not, to create life. It is the hormones that allow us to do all these amazing things. And the minute that we use that language in a derogatory way, in a joking way, in a sort of misogynistic way, dare I say, it prevents us from really looking at what's going on properly. It prevents us from really looking at the root causes of why do I have hormonal imbalance, and the the cultural language of adverts for tampons or sanitary towels that feeds into the narrative of forget about, ignore your period, carry on riding your horse, swimming, playing tennis, because you can use these sanitary products and everything is fine. And whilst that has been a major revolution in women's empowerment, it's sort of coming back to bite us also.
Yeah, yeah, I so completely agree with that, what you just said. There is a lot of conditioning, isn't it? It's like, yeah, just get on with it, go on. Whereas I learned over the years that this time of menstruation is an invitation to slow down. It's an invitation to go inward, to really take care of myself, um, and it's also the time to acknowledge the things that maybe I've been kind of ignoring because I was too busy and I haven't had time. And
Yeah.
I'm 51 now and I'm in a full-blown perimenopause, so my periods are all over the place.
Yeah.
And it's only in the last couple of years that I actually felt empowered enough to say to my partner, I need to step back.
Yeah.
I'm feeling tired. I haven't slept that well. I'm a bit achy. My belly hurts. And I really need to not do a lot today. Could you
Yeah.
do this or could you do that? And
Yeah.
it's taking, and, I've been with my partner for 22 years. And it's taking this building of that relationship over
Yeah.
the whole of that time for him not to be upset with me saying that, but actually saying, okay, yeah, I'm gonna take the dog out, or I'm gonna do the shopping, or and
Yeah.
giving me that time. Whereas before I always had this, like, I needed to be on my own, but I didn't feel I could ask for it, and I didn't think he would understand.
Yeah.
And it's just, so then I would be really irritable and I would be really upset with him because he doesn't read
Yeah.
my mind
So
and doesn't give
take
me what I want and what
So
I need.
take that awareness that you now have, that deep, profound awareness that you have as a perimenopausal, menopausal woman, and imagine, put ourselves back in being an 18-year-old or a
Oh, God.
25-year-old or a 35-year-old's body, where we experience all those things, but either we don't have the language or the confidence or the awareness or the societal support to
Yeah.
be able to say exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
What is that lack of awareness, education, language doing to our young females
Yes.
who are going through exactly what you are going through, but I don't have the ability to express it?
Yeah. I mean, I remember vividly, years ago working in a community center. And there was this alternative practitioner that used to come, and she used to do some massage and that kind of stuff with our clients. And I remember her saying, phoning in one time and saying, I've got really heavy period. I'm not going to come in. And I remember vividly judging her for that and
Yes,
thinking, what do you mean? It's like,
yes,
pop couple of pills,
yes,
pat yourself up, and off you come to work. Like, you have
yeah,
to get on with it. And that really shows the power of conditioning and
yes,
really taking on those messages that,
yeah,
that are all around us, and really thinking, well, actually, if you are serious about your work, this is what you do. There is
yeah,
no time for just stepping back. If you committed, you have to come no matter
yeah,
what. And now that I reflect back, I'm like, oh my God, that is some heavy conditioning that
yes,
I'm exposed to actually think in this way. There is no, when I was young, there was definitely no understanding of the cyclical nature of
yeah,
our bodies, of life, of nature.
yeah,
And exactly what you just said, it's like, if there was one wish that I would have for women and girls, is that we have this understanding, that we have this education, that we allow our younger women to unlearn all of that conditioning.
it's what you're saying is really, really important and really, really fascinating. And I'm thinking about, and I gave a workshop a couple of years ago about this similar thing, proud to be a hormonal woman, and how we have to work in tune with our cycles and what that means for working women, business women, entrepreneurs. I got really, really yelled at also for exactly that. What, you expect me to
Wow.
stay home in bed and be, because I've got my period, I've got a presentation, I've got to show up for a conference, I've got a meeting with my boss. We can unpack that. But what is really interesting, as anyone living in the UK is sort of knows, the menopause conversation, and as we started with, has exploded. The talk about symptoms, hormone replacement therapy, menopausal hormonal therapy has exploded. But again, we're going back to that same paradigm of let's just, and I'm not anti HRT, I want that to be known, I'm not anti HRT, but the conversation is developing in, you're a perimenopausal woman, you have symptoms. Let's just give you that HRT so that you can feel better. Ignore what the symptoms and the signs of your body are really coming to tell you so that you can carry on functioning at this highest level and show up. And I'm not saying that any woman should hide under the covers for 3 months or for 3 years or for 2 days every month. I'm not saying that. I am saying that we need to be listening to the messages our body is sending us. And the minute you use HRT as a cover up, the minute you use the pill as a cover up, the minute you use anything external to cover up whatever it is that is going on, rather than sitting, listening, paying attention, which is much harder to do.
Oh, yeah.
What are the messages my body is sending me? What is it asking from me? What does it want from me? Okay, now I can make an informed decision about, do I want to go down this route, down this route, down this route, down this route? Maybe HRT is part of that journey. Then that is a decision made in connection, rather than a decision of, I've got the symptoms, I've got to treat it so that I can feel better, so that I can, so that I can, so that I can. All the expectations that we have, and ignoring what our hormones are telling us.
Yeah. I mean, Jacqueline, just listening to you, it's just so interesting, the feelings that I am having just in response to what you were just saying. It's this thing of being really, like, if you acted like this towards somebody else,
Yes.
that's not a healthy relationship to start off with. In fact, that's really quite abusive.
Yeah.
And yet, as women, so often we do it to ourselves, because whether we ourselves or the society or others put those expectations onto us.
Yeah.
And this, Cartesian thinking approach that you are only as valuable or worthy as you are productive,
Yes.
as
Yes.
you show up. And so, one of the things that straight away comes into my mind is this disregard for all the women who carry so much wisdom, lived wisdom and
Yeah.
experience, and it happens more to women than men, and that all the women being disregarded, discarded, ignored, and not
Yeah.
appreciated for all the wisdom that they have.
Yeah.
You always see, and I talk a lot about this, like you always see an older guy and a younger woman. That's women at certain age just start being invisible
Yeah.
and start being, honored for all
Yeah.
the lived experience and the wisdom and all the love and nourishment and what they can share with others. So there
Yeah.
is something in here for me, about not just trauma, and we come back to it in a moment, and I'm going to ask you about this in a moment,
Yes.
sense of self and the sense of self-concept, and who we perceive and feel ourselves and see ourselves to be, what we are capable of. And that's within the context of life and work. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, this is one of the things that is so important, because I work primarily these
Yeah.
days with female practitioners who are doing
Yeah.
amazing work, absolutely amazing, and many of them are in that stage of perimenopause and menopause, and yet there is this sense of, they know within themselves, just like I knew within myself, that it's not about how productive I am,
Yeah.
but somehow there is still this constant
Yeah.
bombardment of the media, and you see it everywhere, in the movies, in the series, on TV, in interviews. Very simple, even
Yeah.
like I was just visiting my parents in Poland not long time ago, and again this like morning program, older guy, younger woman. Yeah, and it's just, that's conditioning.
It's very
Like,
European. Yes, I know. So,
it's yeah.
so let me say that I see it as very clear life stages in a woman's life cycle that
Mm,
have certain characteristics and certain energetics. So, and again, it relates to our hormonal expression, what is going on with our hormones at that time, and really the hormonal expression of those reproductive hormones. So,
mm,
in our puberty years, when our system is waking up, and we say sort of puberty is the bookend with perimenopause, menopause, everything is waking up, and we know that at that time, um, girls are, teenagers are looking for more to be more independent, to disconnect slightly from their parents, are looking for that self-validation. There is a lot of energetic, emotional, psychological changes that are going on as the system wakes up, as girls go through those puberty years. And sometimes that can be very traumatic. Sometimes there can be real trauma there. Sometimes it can just be experiential trauma of just what it means to be a regular teenage girl. I don't even know if that exists anymore today. And then there are the next age, which is our reproductive fertility years. And I say that as a biological term, whether you choose to have children or not, whether you can have children or not, it's called the reproductive fertility years, where our menstrual cycle becomes more predictable. And it has this predictable ebbs and flows over the 30 odd days. And with that, we all know that within that 30-day cycle, you're going to have days where you feel amazing and days where you feel like you just want to sit at home, watch a movie, and eat chocolate.
mm.
Those expressions, those physical, psychological, emotion expressions, are expressions of what our hormones are doing. Those, especially specifically those 5 hormones are doing at any given day throughout that menstrual cycle. Obviously, if you do become pregnant, different things happen. But again, that is within the realm of predictability during those fertility reproductive years. Then and during those years also, the body and hormonally, we are at a stage of creating, nurturing, and giving outwards. That is the biology. I'm not talking about society conditioning. The biology of a female body is it is getting ready every month. The hormonal cycle and the expression of the hormones is about creating, giving, nurturing, outward looking. And if you have not chosen or are unable to give birth to a child, you'll often find women that divert those energies to other activities because it's an energetic thing in a body. Women who don't have children, either by choice or otherwise, very often are the busiest doing, setting up, entrepreneurs, charities, because that is the energetic stage of that life cycle, of that life stage. Then you get into that perimenopause stage where hormones again are all over the place. But we're older and we have often more responsibilities. And there are other things going on in our lives. And so the hormonal fluctuation and turmoil, we can't just slam the door and lie in our bed like we could as a teenager. That doesn't really fly anymore if you're a 45-year-old woman with responsibilities, with a partner, with aging parents, maybe with kids, with a job. So the perimenopause, menopause phase is much more traumatic for a woman as she navigates that, again, hormonal fluctuation. But the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because of what you said, because of the post-menopause stage. And that is where we are focusing a lot more understanding and a lot more attention now of what is the energetics and the hormonal expression of a post-menopausal woman. And it is that wiser, more confident, more experienced woman whose hormone levels are now different, lower usually. There is one hormone, FSH, which is a profoundly important hormone that rises, but all our other hormones reach new lower levels. And energetically, biologically, we are now looking, because of this FSH hormone, inward, creatively, nurturing wise, giving birth, expressions that existed beforehand, but they're now more directed inwards. And so you have that image in more tribal societies where you have the elder woman sitting in the circle surrounded by all the younger women, and that elder, wiser woman is the one that now is nurturing, but in a very different way. And we know so many post-menopausal women who now will say no to things. They're not willing to put themselves out anymore in the way that they were when they were younger. You are much more confident in saying, like you have expressed, this is what I need. And I'm going to tell it to you very clearly because I'm not scared anymore. I'm not afraid anymore. I can express it. And if you turn around to me and say no, or if there's a response that in the past I would have just acquiesced to, today I'm not going to do that. One of the things I say is
That's
that
exactly it.
the person you do not want to meet a postmenopausal woman in a dark alley in the middle of the night. Like, that is the woman you do not want to come up against and confront for these reasons. And it is hormonal, but it's the energetic, physical, emotional, psychological expression of the hormonal stage that we are at.
I love that. And thank you so much for taking us through those life stages. I love those life stages. And I think it's one of the things is just to honor every single one of them, to actually acknowledge our changing needs, because I think that's quite a challenge. And to also allow, I don't know whether you agree, but to also allow ourselves to grieve for what has been, what could have been, what we hoped we would do, but it will never happen again. to actually give ourselves that time to acknowledge all of those feelings, because it's not always a celebration, isn't it? It's like we
No.
can celebrate what we've achieved, who we've become, and who we are, but
Yeah.
there is also a lot of things when it's that collapsing of the potentials, isn't it? Once you
Yeah.
choose one path, all the other paths
Yeah. It's
go
also, and
away.
I was with a client this morning who's really going through this at the moment. She's 45 and she's really experiencing a lot of um, deep emotional, psychological symptoms of her perimenopause journey. And there is an element of shedding who you were to become who you want to be without even knowing who that new person is going to be and who it's going to look like. And she said to me exactly this. She said, uh, even though this fills me with so much anxiety, the person who I am, who I was, I really can't let it go because I don't know, because I'm familiar with this person. This person I know, I've been with this person for the last 45 years. I don't know who the next person looks like. So even though she is aware, which is the first stage, to have that awareness, she's holding on to something that is not serving her anymore. This is the journey, but it's acknowledging perimenopause is a journey. The symptoms, the experiences, especially the deep emotional, psychological things that some women go through, it is part of shedding who you were. And whether you know it yet or not, trying to figure out who this person is you're going to become. That for me is the really deeply profound essence of perimenopause, which we aren't talking about because let's just put on that estrogen patch and stop our anxiety and carry on like everything's fine. Again, I say that with respect to those people who have an estrogen patch. I don't want to be disparaging, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think I definitely do. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the trauma. Like
Yes.
we had those conversations previously, but I wanted to bring it in here
Yeah.
with the changing hormones throughout our life with different life stages. And, many of us have experienced traumas, whether it was a big event or a series of little things that impacted us. And if we look at the trauma through the lens of, the definition that I really love to share, which is the trauma happens when our experience is unwitnessed and unacknowledged.
Mm.
And, with context of the hormones and the life stages, could you say a little bit about that? What is the kind of
Yeah.
thing that comes up the
Yeah.
most in your work?
Yeah. So this is really fascinating. And again, I'm going to put it in a life cycle context, but I am going to focus on the woman who is coming to me in perimenopause. So anywhere 40 plus. And as you said, trauma, as we all know, you are the expert in this, trauma lives in our body. And as you said, it doesn't matter whether it's big T trauma or little T trauma. It doesn't matter if it was a serious traumatic experience, God forbid abuse, or small T trauma. Someone made fun of you on the school playground for being, overweight. Our body experiences those two things emotionally, memory wise, as a traumatic experience. And even if you have had therapy to acknowledge and process that traumatic experience, and even if you have lived for 20 years or 15 years in a stable way, having dealt with that trauma, we're putting the best case scenario as our example. Along comes perimenopause and menopause, and the hormonal fluctuations and the energetic change that is going on in our body. And everything gets stirred up again. I use the analogy of a big soup pot where all the stuff is like settled on the bottom and then it's sort of very stable and quiet. And then comes along perimenopause, this big ladle that mixes up the whole soup pot and everything comes up to the surface. So, prior trauma, and it doesn't have to be anything big, and it doesn't have to be when you were a child. It could have been at any stage of your life. I had a client who said to me, she was in her late 40s. She said, I'm not going through a traumatic, stressful time in my life at the moment. She had blessed with 4 kids. The 4th child was a little bit younger than her other kids. She said, like, my kids are big. I'm running a successful business. I don't have any real stress or trauma in my life now. And I said to her, it doesn't have to be trauma that you're experiencing or stress you're experiencing now. It could be something that happened 10, 11 years ago. And she said, I don't know what happened 10, 11 years ago. That year of my life is blocked out. I was going through infertility treatments for my son. And I was like, well, there's your answer. 10 years ago, she went through fertility treatments for her son. Her 4th child, that year is in a haze for her. She doesn't remember that year. 10 years later, she is experiencing debilitating menopausal symptoms, but she is not in stress today. She is not in trauma today. So we really need to acknowledge the role and the impact of stress and trauma on our bodies, and how it may very much, even if it's been dealt with, how in these very fluctuating, turbulent hormonal years, things can appear and you're like, where has that come from? Yeah. I thought that was dealt with, and here it is again.
Yeah. I guess it's what we really need to remember, and the examples that you just show very clearly, is that our body is our biography. Everything is recorded. So even if you did some healing work around it or therapeutic work around it, it's still part of you. And one of the things that I see quite a lot is this, especially within our Western society, this focus on fixing something. Like, this is uncomfortable, or this is painful. I want to do something to fix it and get rid of it. And I know from my own experience, it's like the biggest shift that we can have is to really understand, well, actually, that was a significant thing that happened to me.
Yeah.
I can't go back in time and undo it, so it never happens and it doesn't impact me. It's actually part of who I am. And can I learn to love myself with that thing that happened to me, and not treat myself as something to be fixed and improved and sorted and neatly put together, but actually, can I love myself through the whole of this human mess and feeling and being emotional, messy woman, imperfect in every sense, and really beautiful in every sense.
Yeah. And it's really hard to do that when the images we are bombarded with are not that. I know there were just some awards in Hollywood this week. And again, you're seeing the dresses, the glitter, the jewelry, the perfectly made up woman,
the face jobs,
the face and the bodies that are like, that is the image that we now imagine. And to be honest, even with the menopause conversation that is happening in the UK, who are the faces of that menopause conversation? They are women who look amazing. And that is not real life for any of us. And it's something that we all are aware of, but we still live in, and it still percolates. So there is layers and layers of trauma. There's layers and layers of self-identity. There's layers and layers of images of who and what we need to look like. And again, I saw a post today on someone who has, and I know a few women who have lost weight, and they now have totally transformed their bodies, and they've totally transformed, and they've lost significant amount of weight, transformed. And then what job do they then do? They then become life coaches to help other women lose the weight. Again, it's not weight, it's emotions, it's trauma, it's mindset. It's all framed in a very, very appropriate language. But the end goal is still, that's my pre-picture, that's my post-picture. Join me so that you can go on this journey. I'm not saying it's not okay. It's perfectly fine. But there's some underlying something about it that is just not, that we have to question. We just need to ask the question. I'm not saying don't do it. We just have to ask the question that the before and after images, everyone wants that beautiful, stunning after image without just saying, this is my body. This is who I am. This body has served me. I will say personally for myself, like I am not the thinnest person ever. I am 50. I'm in perimenopause. I have a nice big belly. But my body, my feminine, female hormonal body has allowed me to birth 5 children. My feminine, female hormonal body allowed me to become an entrepreneur and create a whole new business when I was 40. My female feminine body allows me to do all the things and manage my house and my this and my that. And yes, sometimes take time and say, oh my God, I feel totally overwhelmed. But let's just embrace the who and what I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being too idealistic, and maybe people are going to say, yeah, that's great, Jacqueline, but you're blessed.
Well, for one, I want to say that I completely agree with that. And, it's taking a long time to love my body, and especially my changing body. And one of the things is this sense of, even if I think it, I feel kind of quite moved. It's that sense of tenderness for, like, if I think about my body, I feel this sense of tenderness and appreciation of it being how it is. And yes, similar to you, my weight has changed with the hormonal cycles, and now that I'm in perimenopause, and but my relationship with myself has also changed, and the wisdom that comes from it, and being able to relate to myself in a different way. And it's so much kinder than just really being quite a lot of time. What we have to do to make really quite strong changes within our bodies is to be quite punishing, especially in a short period of time, rather than thinking about it as a lifestyle choice, as a way of, I'm going to make my body strong because I want to be able to go for long walks. I want to move my body so I don't have pains and aches and start taking lots of pills because I'm in so much discomfort. I'm going to look after my body so I don't have digestive issues because that's uncomfortable, and that will impact the quality of my life. So rather than really that body image that we are so bombarded in the especially in the mainstream media of how a woman should look, it's really looking at the history of how what's perfect from the mainstream media perspective has changed. You look at Marilyn Monroe, and then you look at Kate Moss, and then you look, it's very different bodies at different points in time. And I think ultimately, if we just approach it in this gratitude and appreciation for this home that we have right here, because this is our
I know,
I know,
but you know what, Annetta, though, and it goes back to the trauma, it goes back to the identity of self, it goes back to us embracing our bodies as hormonal beings. If you were to ask X number of women, what would they prefer? How would they prefer, if they had the choice, their body to look? Slightly bigger, or beautiful, slender, thin, being able to wear anything and look amazing, or healthy, like you said, healthy, strong, a bit more muscular, maybe a bit more curvy? How many women would choose the slim, slender, typical Hollywood-esque actress style versus something else. It's so deeply embedded in our psyche,
Yeah.
and I think there is that part of menopause that maybe a little bit for some women, we just let it allow as much as we can. We try to let it go. But it's complicated. It's really complicated. And that's why we are complicated hormonal beings. And the medical profession has sort of tried to slightly move us aside because women are complicated. We
Too
are
much trouble.
yeah, and also things change. Things change for women. Look, they change for men also, but less in slightly less, but we are changing. We are changing on a daily basis. Our hormones are changing on a daily basis. External factors, we are very we take it very, very strongly as feminine energy. Again, I'm not saying men don't, but I think women do in a slightly deeper way. And that makes us complicated. And that's why we have been ignored or sidelined in the medical field. And that's why there is a sort of classic, simple, easy image of a woman that is portrayed because and it's it's really, really complicated. I think it's really complicated. And I don't want anyone listening to take away from our conversation that, well, just, throw off the shackles of Western cultural society and, just let's embrace our bodies and let's all just sing Kumbaya. It's not that. It's not that. It's just understanding what does it mean to be a hormonal female in this body that is constantly changing.
Yeah. What a magnificent beings we are.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying this conversation, but I'm aware of the time. So I want to ask maybe one last question, couple of questions. So first of all, if there was one piece of advice that you would give to women, what would that be?
Yeah. I think it's to start listening and paying attention. Our body is sending us signs and signals the whole time. The question is, are you listening? And sometimes what we know is that the messages are very quiet and silent and whispers. And if you don't pay attention, they get louder and louder until you're eventually, knocked over knocked in the face by this, God forbid, hopefully not, some major, calling that your body is shouting at you. Often in the form of disease or sickness or illness. We really want to pay attention to the messages our body is sending us first and get the help and the treatment and the support you need, but make sure you are not covering it up and that you're paying attention.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. And the second thing, before we finish,
yes,
how can our listeners find you? If they're interested to find out more about your work, where can they find you?
So I am Jacqueline Rose Women's Health all over social media. You can check out my website, Jacqueline Rose Health. And I spell Jacqueline the most complicated French way that you can make it with all the letters of the alphabet. So Jacqueline Rose Women's Health or Jacqueline Rose Health is my website. And I'm on all social media channels. And that's basically where you can get me. And I work with women one-on-one, supporting them through their menopause journey. And I'm also launching, I don't know when this podcast episode is coming out, but menopause-informed training program for practitioners, people who are already working, supporting women 40 plus, but want to really more deeply understand the menopause piece and how it's showing up. So, yeah.
Amazing stuff. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for joining me here and taking time to chat about those very important topics.
Thank you, Anessa, for having me.